Hey folks, myself Satabrata Paul, and today I am here to share my experience about how I cracked the Linux Foundation Mentorship, how I got into this major open source program. So I have been receiving a lot of DMs in my LinkedIn where like folks have asked me to share my experience, what should they do, what not. So I'll be sharing my experience today, and I'll start as to how I got introduced to open source, right, and why did LFX fascinate me, and like I guess this would eventually help all of you to get all of your questions which you had asked me, and so yeah, that is what I'm gonna do. So okay, so that's Horlicks by the way. That's not caffeine. I just forgot to buy Nescafe, so I always resort to Horlicks. So, anyways, and the season is changing, guys. So stay safe. I myself am not too much well, right? Not been too much productive since the last 3 days. Suffering from fever and cough, but yeah. Anyways, so stay safe, right? It's really important. It's really important for you all to be productive, and yeah. So before I start on with my journey as to how I got into LFX, right, I would just give a brief introduction about myself. I'm a passionate backend and cloud developer. I love DevOps as well, right? And I've done I'm in my right now in my final year of study. I'm pursuing BTech from in computer science and engineering from Heritage Institute of Technology, Kolkata. So my hometown is based in Siliguri. So like if any one of you heard about Darjeeling, it's just like 2 hours from my home. So yeah, and I love software development. I love backend especially. I love AWS cloud. I've been exploring backend and AWS cloud since my second semesters, and I've done previous internships. I have done an internship at Finbox, which is one of the leading fintech startups of India. Right, I have contributed in open source programs, starting with the very basic, that is Girl Script Summer of Code. Then got into the Linux Foundation, uh, and right now I am an SWE backend engineering intern at Atlan. And so Atlan is the one of the leading product based companies, right? It's the powerhouse for data teams all across the world, right? So I'm really privileged that I am a part of the team and I'm working currently here. And these are all my like professional stats. I'm also in various communities. I am a postman student leader at my campus. I am also an Auth Zero ambassador, wherein I represent my college across the globe. And I have been the co-team member of Google Developer Students Club at my college as well. So it was a 1 year tenure. So I have held multiple online and offline sessions wherein I teach people, guide people like beginners in technology. I love teaching people, right? Giving them as to what, like how should they start, where should they start. So yeah, community engagement has always been one of my top-notch priorities. And apart from this, these are all my professional statistics. And in my personal time, I love singing. I love singing a lot. Like I'm into music. Yeah, music is my all-time best friend. And sometimes I do read books, right? And yeah, that's pretty much about myself. For those folks who are watching this and do not know me personally, I would definitely love to get connected with you all over LinkedIn. And if you do have Twitter, do follow me. You can search out my name. I guess in the first search I'll be available. So yeah, let's get started as to like how I got into open source. Okay, so the journey for open source actually, when I was in my, you can say, uh, beginning of third years, right? So I was just exploring technologies in a more detailed and a more detailed fashion. At that point of time, I got introduced to a term known as open source projects, right? What are these? How do we like proceed on, or let's say how can we contribute? Before the word contribute came, right, there was a particular term known as version control or Git. So I learned it from some of my seniors as well. I learned it from you can say various YouTube videos that people are talking about Git, GitHub, all of these like stuffs. So I personally learned version control right, and I got to understand that how this is used in contributing, right. But more importantly, I got introduced to open source. I would say there was like Google Summer of Code. It is held every year, right? It's one of the major and most you can say popular open source program that is there. So what I did is that Google Summer of Code 2021. So it was like the applications were already closed, but you can still visit the website, right? So I went there, and there I found out as to, okay, fine. This is what open source is. Like there is a detailed section as to given, like if you are like contributing for the first time, what is open source, like what are open source projects, what is Google Summer of Code, how can it help. So I got an entire overview regarding that, but I was still confused as to how can I start my contribution. That is the first thing. So because Google Summer of Code is a very big platform, right? So you need to take small steps in order to reach there. So I eventually searched out for those open source programs which are a bit like more. I would not say that it's small or big in terms of the fame or something, but something that, yeah, is within my reach, something that I felt that, okay, fine, this can be a starting point, right? So there are many search, and one of the most like popular open source program is the Girl Script Summer of Code. So Girl Script Summer of Code for 2021 had already been crossed, so I had actually lost both of the deadlines for Google Summer of Code and like Girl Script Summer of Code as well. So I thought that, okay, fine, let's prepare myself, right? Let's prepare myself for the next year, that is 2022, this particular year. And I the first thing which I focused on is that, okay, fine, like let's do one thing. Let's focus on Google Summer of Code, because I guess it's like if you crack Google Summer of Code, your level of confidence will go a bit like very high, right? You won't have any issues on that. But you need to also keep in mind that it's Google Summer of Code, right? You need to have that skill set within you. You need to have that like confidence for contribution. You need to have a mindset, okay, fine, this is what open source contribution is. This are the set of things that I would like to contribute in any project, right? So before all of this, where I started, I would start right now, is that I started from the very scratch. Very scratch means I found out what are the technologies, right, that are used in open source, right, that are used in various projects which are in an open source program. So it can be anything, right? It can be let's say for instance, I love coding in Python, right? So I'm also into backend. So Django is one of the frameworks which is mostly used in Python in backend. So I told myself that, okay, fine, there ought to be projects, right, where Django is used, right, where databases, for instance, NoSQL database, then you have like SQL databases, so there are Postgres, then there are in-memory databases, for instance, Redis or Memcache. So all of these things I curated first of all, right? Okay, fine, these are the technologies which is my stronghold and my strong point, and these technologies are used in some of the projects which come in these open source programs. So the first step is to polish up and brush up the skill set. Why? So that we can be confident, okay, fine, I am confident enough to contribute. Now what is the contribution to be made, what that project demands, that's the second thing. First thing is that you should be confident about your skill sets. So the thing which I actually like, my tech stack is backend with cloud, that is AWS cloud, and I involve DevOps practices, that is I like Docker, Kubernetes, and then for like infrastructure as a code, you can use Terraform, or let's say you have Ansible for like uh, that purpose as well. But yeah, so I majorly focus on the backend technologies wherein we develop the application, right, and also on the DevOps practices where we can scale that application through Docker containerization and Kubernetes and all of those stuffs. So I first of all, within this period, like I got my target set that either it has to be 2022 Google Summer of Code, right, or the Girl Script Summer of Code which I had in mind, right. So I had to get my skill sets ready first for that, right. That's where the first step was. The second step is like knowing what a project is, or what that particular thing is, right, what that project means, or how are we supposed to contribute, right. That is one of the major questions which I have received in my DMs, that how to understand what to contribute, right. So the second step was, for to make some contribution you need to learn some version control, right? That's where I got more, you can say, attached to Git and GitHub. That was the first, like, the thing which I thought that, okay, fine, if that is Git and GitHub, this is what I need to learn, right? So that's where I felt that I need to put in more efforts from myself, so I got into Git and GitHub in that particular case. So I learned where Git and GitHub plays an important role in open source development, right? Why is it so much preferred, right? So two steps are done. The skill sets are furnished, right? It's brushed up, right? I'm confident about my skill set. I have learned that, okay, fine, version control is used for contributing. Now let's proceed on as to know what to contribute, right? So initially, if you see the structure of these open source programs which are there, so there are multiple organizations who participate. They have their own repositories which corresponds to any particular application which that particular organization is trying to develop or has developed and needs some improvements in those, right? So every other kind of, you can say, application will has its code base, right? And you can access the code base over GitHub, the public repository of that particular application. The point is, if you take up a repository and try to understand the code base, trust me, you will feel very much overwhelmed, right? Overwhelmed as to, like, where should I start, right? What does this application do? Which is the starting point of this application, right? There are lots of code, lots of files here and there, functions, classes and objects, constructors getting called, function calling, returning, right? There are HTTP responses, like send requests coming in. There may be WebSockets protocol as well. All of these things initially at the first time when you take a look at the code repository of any application feels very overwhelming, feels like, okay, fine, this is not for me, man, I cannot understand. But no, not that. The point where you should focus on is, let's say, you can contact the maintainers of that particular repository, like who have actively contributed previously or who are the owners of that particular repository. They are the members of that organization, they know what that application does. So what you can do is that, as a starting point, you can communicate with them, right, via email, that, okay, I am looking forward to contribute, can you please help me to understand this particular aspect of this code repository, I'm unable to understand. And trust me, they do reply. It's not that your email stays on pending for years and years. It's not that. Yeah, maybe you might face a delay in responses for about a week or so, but you will get some responses. So that's the thing which you can take up from your part, like it's your initiative to start that particular conversation, that I am unable to understand this part, can you please help me out with that, I would like to be an active contributor to this particular project. Although the open source program has not yet started at that point of time, still you can do so, right? This shows that you're passionate about open source, right? You're passionate about contribution. Now you might also ask me, just it came in my mind, that why open source, like what is the meaning of the term known as open source? Open source means that there is no particular, you can say, member of that you do not need to be officially a member of that organization to contribute. You can be a developer, right? You can be a student, you can be a working professional, you can be any developer in this world. If you understand the code repository, if you have the skill sets to contribute, if you understand that what the project demands from you to contribute something, you can do so. So that's what open source is, essentially. And so uh, like, after you can do this thing which I told you, you can mail, right? One more thing is that you can take a look at the issues section, right? So if you go to a particular GitHub repository, you will find there's a section known as issues. Issues, basically, it's not that something is wrong in the application, only those things will be there, not, yeah, that's a part of it, right? You will also see that certain feature enhancements are also demanded from the project maintainers there, right? And those, everything are mentioned in that particular issues section. So for starting phase, you see that there are labels attached, right? You can look for those labels which contain that good first label issue, right? I guess good first issue, that's what the label is named as. So those particular issues that have this particular label named as good first issue are the ones for, like, that you can proceed on to continue, as a beginner perspective, right? Because other issues may need a deeper understanding of the code base, a more deeper deep dive into what the application does, a more deeper deep dive into the code repository as well. But good first issues are like it's for beginner level contribution, so you can obviously do that. So this is the way you can try to understand the entire code base, what they like the application is trying to do, right? And obviously now you might also ask me that fine, let's say if the repository uses Docker and I do not know Docker, for instance, or let's say the repository is written in JavaScript and I know Python, right? What to do in that case? Yeah, so you need to find that particular repository that matches your skill sets. You remember the step one which we did, right? You need to focus on those repositories that actually matches your skill sets, those technologies which you know. With the help of those, some application exists, right? You should take a look at those code repositories. So this is one of the things that you should keep in mind first of all, right, when you're getting started, right? After that, okay fine, now when you have understood, okay fine, this is the thing that I need to contribute, or this is the thing that the project demands out of me as a contributor, then you can go on contributing, right? Now you might ask me, how to do I know that, how what are the steps that I should follow for contributing, right? So if you look at the repository, like any kind of open source project repository, there's a particular file known as contributing.md, right? It's a markdown file. So in those, there are the entire guidelines written that these are the steps that you should follow to build out a feature, or let's say you're solving some bug, right? This is the thing that you should follow and then make your first contribution. So this is how I essentially proceeded, right? I took up a code repository. I actually went to the like Google Summer of Code repository for 2021. I picked out one of the organizations that had Django involved, because I personally know Django, and I saw the structure, right? I tried to get a brief overview as to what that is. Yeah, I did not contribute, but I tried to do it locally, right? I cloned the repository, I brought into my own working station, right? I tried, okay fine, this is let me take a look at that good first issue label. I picked out one of the issues. I tried to understand what that application does, like hovering over each folder, getting a brief context as to what the file does, right? Where the function calls are being made, what it is returning. So all of these things, I got a clearer picture. I got to understand how open source works actually. Now, so in the year of 2022, when this particular thing came, the time for GSOC application, that is Google Summer of Code applications, I couldn't apply. The reason being, I was at that point of time an intern at Finbox, right? So couldn't focus much on this side, because you're an intern, you have a particular responsibility when you're working with any kind of organization, right? You need to give time there, right? You cannot neglect that, because obviously you are working for a company, you are an asset to that company, and you cannot just neglect that. So this thing, like, so it was kind of disheartening for me as well, because I couldn't like apply for GSOC. But yeah, I had started with Girl Script Summer of Code from March, right? Just 1 month prior to when the application started for Google Summer of Code, I had started with Girl Script Summer of Code. You remember I told that two things were in mind. It's either GSOC or Girl Script Summer of Code, because I just wanted to get started. I wanted to like get started with like open source. How does that thing look? So I got into Girl Script Summer of Code, right? I picked out a repository. The process which I told you, right? I contacted the maintainer, right? That okay fine, can you like, I first of all I found out the issue, like from the issues sections which I felt that I can solve. I commented there, the issues got assigned to me. I tried to work on them. Wherever I felt that I need some help, I like put some comments there. I got in contact with the project maintainers actually for that particular code repository, the same steps that I told you. And yeah, successfully I made my first ever open source contributions. I remember, I guess 5 to 6 pull requests from me got merged in like Girl Script Summer of Code. I know the number may be less you're thinking for a period of 3 months, but I also had to work as an intern. So yeah, managing both of them parallelly. And after that, my tenure for that intern also ended. The Girl Script Summer of Code also ended. Now I thought that fine, I could have done like could have applied like for Google Summer of Code, right? Um, like getting selected or not, it's a different matter. But if I do not apply, that's something which ate me up from within. It was some kind of a guilt. But then yeah, major open source programs doesn't mean only Google Summer of Code. Major open source programs also means the Linux Foundation Mentorship. It's one of the like biggest like you can say it's like I cannot compare actually. Like I cannot compare Google Summer of Code and Linux Foundation. It would be very like I am not the right person honestly to like compare. But both of them have really significant valuables in the world of open source, right? If you take the name of the world of open source, these two names are the things that pops up first, right? So I thought that why not Linux Foundation like mentorship, since I've got a gist of what open source is from Girl Skip Summer of Code, right? Why not this one? Let's try it out. So if you take a look at the structure of the Linux Foundation like mentorship, right, LFX, you will see that there are applications accepted all around the year. It happens in basically you can say quarters. The quarter would not be the particular terminology which they use actually terms, right? So there is this spring term, then there is summer term, then there is fall term, which means the winters, right? So you can consider that each term continues for 3 to 4 months or maybe 5 months, like that, right? 3 to 4 months, yeah. So applications in the Linux Foundation mentorship are accepted all over the year. You just need to find that same process. You need to find the perfect repository, not repository first of all, the project wherein your skill sets are there. You can see that, okay, fine, these are my skill sets. This particular project, let's say project A, has those technologies used, so I should go with that. So I also did the same thing. I went to LFX. I found Open Delight. Right, this is one of the projects which fascinated me regarding what that particular thing required from me as a skill set. I read the entire project description, what needed and all, and then I applied. Right. So application process is like you have to. So the point is, every other organization that partners with the Linux Foundation has a different kind of criteria for selecting you, right? And also there is a slight different criteria for applications as well, which means that some of the organizations actually take your applications to a separate portal, not a portal, but they handle it separately out of the LFX portal, right? That's what I mean. Some of them conduct it on the LFX portal only. There will be series of steps which you need to complete, and based upon your particular performance there, the project maintainers will judge that whether they want to take you as an intern for that particular project for open source contributions or not, right? That is one of the things. So I applied there. Mine was like, obviously there are certain documents which you need to submit, like your resume, no objection certificate, like from your university for instance. That's like in my case it required that. So I found the particular project in which I wanted to contribute, right? I applied, and trust me, I got a reply after about 1.5 weeks, wherein I had just given up that fine, okay, LFX bhi nahi hua, right? This also didn't happen. So okay, cheer up, better luck next time. But yeah, after 1.5 weeks I got some reply. They actually gave out one assignment for me to do. Assignment is like just a kind of a thing which I needed to solve and send them, right, within 24 or 48 hours. I guess it was 48 hours, yeah. I had to submit them. So it totally depends upon the project maintainers of that particular project for that particular organization to determine what are the steps that they will follow to select a particular candidate. So it's not in our hands, right? So that's where I particularly applied. I was confident, okay, fine, reading the project description, going through what that project needs, what are the technologies used in that particular project. That's where I felt confident, and that's why I applied, right? And the assignment which I received, I completed that positively. Then the project maintainer got in contact with me, and I was selected for that. Like, among there were other candidates who had also applied earlier, but there was a particular like step wherein they all had failed, and I was the one to pass that. So that's the reason, like, and also they see your passion, right? They see your previous work as well from your resume, but more than that, the thing that they demand out of you is the passion and how knowledgeable are you to understand that particular project and what that thing demands, right? So in my case it was an assignment, in your case it might not be that thing, right? It just depends upon the organization and the project maintainers, but something or the other related to this will happen, right? So that's where I got into LFX as an intern there, right? It's called an intern in proper official terms of the Linux Foundation, but actually you can consider it to be an open source contribution, right? So this was the thing how I applied. The advice which I would like to give you all is that focus on the skill sets. That is the must, that's the most important thing. Try to understand what each of them does. This requires some patience, right? Looking at a particular code repository, right? I'm just talking about the open source code repository, right? If you like are accustomed, like if you have done some previous internships and or you have worked in a particular company, the code bases of any kind of organization are huge, man. It's humongous. Like there are lots and lots of folders, files. You do not know actually where what is happening, right? Where you should need to exactly focus and pinpoint, right, to solve the issue or to make some contribution. In the initial first few days you'll be bamboozled, right, what is happening. But that's where the like edge and that's where the difference lies, right? You keep on pushing yourself. If you do not understand, take help from the maintainers of the project, right? Get to understand how open source works. Open source means that you are a developer, you're a passionate developer, you know technologies. There is a particular application that uses that technology, and it has built out some application, and those applications are being used worldwide. So why not I contribute and make it better? That's what the agenda of open source is, right? So focus on these steps which I told, right? For LFX specifically, if you just search out for LFX mentorship in Google, you will be directed to the official page. There you can search out that projects that are currently accepting applications right now. You can go there, read the project descriptions, right? You won't get the code like repo, I think so. Yeah, in case of LFX you do not get the repo directly because they have that particular filtering and criteria, that's things there. I guess it's the same with GSOC as well, I'm not sure about, but yeah. But reading the project description, getting an overview and the technologies which are used there, if you feel confident about a project, go ahead and apply. Don't refrain from applying, right? LFX was like it was one of my dreams actually to go into a major open source program, either Google Summer of Code or the Linux Foundation. So 2023, I am hoping that maybe I don't know what's in my fate, but I'll be able to crack GSOC as well. But yeah, this particular experience from LFX and Gulfscript Summer of Code actually gave me the foundation base for open source, right? And specifically, I guess I may have answered all of the questions which you all had asked in DMs, or like if I had missed out something, like do mention in the comment section below, right? I would be more than happy to clear them. That's first. And one more thing is that guys, before I drop off, is don't lose hope, right? Have patience and confidence. That's the like thing which everyone should have. And I'm saying this personally because like I sometimes like go through demotivations, right? And I cannot express all of them here. Demotivation in the sense of work, right? The pressurization, right? Anxieties to like what will happen in like future. Let's say if I go with this track, will I be able to proceed on properly or not? But yeah, let's not bring those. I personally, every other developer goes through it, right? But if you can overcome that what makes you different from 100 others in the crowd, right? So yeah, focus on that. And the LFX part, right? I guess now it's the last term of 2022, like the fall term. Just go and check if any other applications are being acceptable and if that suits your particular tech stack or not, right? So they keep on accepting applications, and mostly you will find like the tech stack are more around cloud native, or let's say Docker, DevOps, right? There are even like it's not only DevOps and cloud, but there are like code contributions, like there are test tests. For instance, like we write unit tests, right? For any kind of software before it's pushed into production, there are certain tests available there as well. So there are particular projects that specifically focus on testing part. You can check out that as well. So all of these things are there for LFX. And for Google Summer of Code, yeah, it happens once in a year. Every year, I guess at the time of April, the application start off. Previous to that, from February, I suppose, the organizational list is out, right? The projects are out, so that the candidates can check as to what which particular project they are interested and they can contribute. Yeah, so I guess this is all of the information that I had to provide. So thank you folks for your time, and hope to see you in another self podcast. So there is no like host here. So yeah, that's it. Like, keep hustling, and like, be a good person, like good developer. That's it. Yeah, thank you. Bye folks.